Thank you for joining us today for another Microsoft Mastery Call. I'm Shannon Proverbs, your community manager and MC. Today we come back to you with insight, and we're going to be talking a little bit about going passwordless. We're going to have our first guest speaker with us for the year, Think AI. They're going to go through their organization, have a little bit of a chat with Justin about some of the things they're excited for 2025, and then from there we will transition over to our main discussion about going passwordless, how you can use that as an additional service, how we've adopted that internally, and how that's helped our organization, and how that can provide additional opportunities for you as well. So we're going to kick off with Top of Mind with Justin. We're going to go into our partner spotlight with Think AI. They can share with us the things that they're doing over there. And then the main discussion after that, I'll talk to you a little bit about what is next up on the calendar. And so with that being said, Justin, please take it away.
All right. Thanks, Shannon. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Great to see everybody, and looking forward to continuing the series. And we've got lots of things planned out. And for 2025, we've got a lot of new things that we're going to be adding to the portfolio of offers that we have for you all. So a couple things top of mind for me today. One, there was a big announcement that came out. If you guys get the Microsoft 365 updates every week, one of the ones that they just announced, something that we had heard at Ignite, but they're putting a date on it, and that is for February, is the texting, SMS texting is coming to Teams. So I know there's a lot of customers out there who have been asking for this. There's a lot of new things and capabilities that we'll be able to add for customers who are using Teams, as whether they're using for a phone system or whatever it might be. So that it now has a date. So really looking forward to that announcement. Another thing that I wanted to remind everyone of, in a couple weeks, that January 22nd date is right around the corner. So if you recall, we had Taylor from Microsoft come in and talk about that the silver and gold competencies are officially going away on that day. Everyone's going to be forced to have the renewals to the solution designations. But with that comes a whole slew of new internal use rights. One of the things that we know from experience and working with a bunch of partners is that a lot of partners don't leverage all of their internal use rights, but we should plan for this, right? So Copilot internal use rights are coming. There's some new Teams things. There's some new data and Fabric. There's a lot of new internal use rights. So start planning for that because they will be active. If you have solution designations and specializations, you will get those upon launch on the January 22nd date. So be ready for those. If you haven't reviewed what those new internal use rights are going to be, feel free to ping us, and we're happy to walk you through it. Then I will also share with you all, we're going to do a demo of it next week, but we do have a new TPM managed partner portal that will be launching. We're just working on one small bug to have our Copilot feature enabled. But we'll probably show it to you next week, where you guys will have access, all partners. In fact, we're going to make this available to all partners at no cost to come in and be able to leverage things like our TPM University, to be able to have access to some reporting. We feel like there's some enhancements to Partner Center and being able to get better information from Partner Center. Those types of things will be available, as well as being able to go through and look through all the old mastery calls that we've done in the past. So hang tight. We'll do that. I think we'll do that next week and kind of give you guys an overview of what that looks like. So many more things to come. Okay, with that, I want to bring in my friend Manish Bardia from Think AI. So for our first partner spotlight of 2025, I want to bring in a good friend of mine. So Manish and I go way back, probably dating us, but 8 to 10 years, something of that nature. We met through the International Association of Microsoft Channel Partners, or IAMCP, in the SoCal chapter. And Manish has just done an incredible job of growing his business, Think AI. So Manish, why don't you tell us a little bit about Think AI and a little about yourself?
Yes, Justin. So 12 years as of now.
12 years.
I think we met 2013 when you were actually just at one of the learning partners. So great journey here at IMCP, and very thankful for the Microsoft community because they had the local partner meetup going on, local office available. So we were able to grow our business from a basic consulting business to now AI and data consulting. So Think AI is a custom software development company mostly focused on data and AI. And we started 6 years back. This is not just a now AI trend for us. Dave, my business partner, who is the CEO of Think AI, has also been hands-on data field for many years, worked with Microsoft, worked with Starbucks, J&J, all these companies. So that's where we started our data journey, and natural progression to data was the AI. So we have done a lot of partnering, and we are fully focused on data and AI, and we just got advanced specialization also. So that's about Think AI.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Manish, tell us a little bit about like partnering. So obviously, Partner Spotlight, one of the big goals that we have is to be able to introduce partners where it makes sense. What does an ideal partner look like for Think AI?
Just with any game you talk, every partner is like a player in one of the team. They have their strong area. So our strong area is data and AI. When you are going to clients, they are looking to our partners as a single source of solution, or they are trusting them to bring the right resources to help in various area. So our area of focus is all custom solution and data and AI. MSPs, Dynamics partners, and fractional CFOs or the fractional CIOs are our best partners because they don't touch anything on the software, and we don't touch anything on the infrastructure or Dynamics sides. So many partners just bring us to expand their Azure footprint or handle all their tech stack. Any custom old legacy software need modernization, or local on-premise to cloud migration. So that's where we come as a strong partner.
Okay. So data focused, Azure migrations, and then like with AI, I know you guys have come a long way. And in fact, you have some software now, right?
Yes. So Agentic AI, if you were actually at Ignite, it was not just about what AI is doing, it's about Agentic AI, right? Agents are small softwares which will do personal work, organizational work, teamwork, or cross-organizational work. So that's what we are focusing on Agentic AI. So we have a software called Amy.ai, which will do a job of a project lead or a project manager.
Yeah, and what I love about that is like we were even talking with the IMCP team yesterday, and they were talking about, oh, sometimes there's these tasks and people don't follow up with them. But what's great about your software is that like it has a feature where if somebody doesn't complete the task, it continues to remind them in a bunch of different ways, right?
Yes, that is true. We integrate with Teams. The follow-up goes in text, email, or Teams message. And now we are also integrated with Zoom. So it's available on Microsoft Azure App Source.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, so that's obviously one of the things that there's so many tasks that we all have to get completed, but it's nice to have a few reminders. And when you got AI out there reminding you 1,000 different ways, hopefully it'll help you get it done. Hey, John brought up a good point. He said he just received your book. I read your book. That was really good. Great overview of AI. But why did you write a book?
So this was my second book. Whatever coming to my passion, I mean, whatever I'm liking, I'm writing a book. So first one was on collaboration. So it was more on teamwork and right on time during the COVID. And then now AI has come up on a big way. The reason I wrote was all customers need to know where to get started on AI. So the third chapter actually focuses on like, if you want to get started, focus on these basic area, which is nothing but sales, marketing, customer service, research and development, and coding. So research and development and coding, maybe people can leave, but all companies can start with operations and customer service and sales and marketing.
But has it done anything for you as a business? Like, is it a door opener? Like, what's the return that you've gotten from having the book or books?
Yeah, just trust building activity more than anything. So people are less interested in talking if they don't have anything to see which they can trust on. But when I'm bringing the book to them, then they're like, okay, we have some subject matter expert to talk. So let's get the conversation going.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, Manish, if you don't mind, put your contact information in on the chat. We'll allow everybody to reach out to you if they're looking to expand a partnership around data, AI, custom software. Appreciate you having you in our Partner Masters community, and look forward to partnering more.
So just 20-second, Justin, if we can bring Dave, he has some special offer for all our business partners because we just got certified on advanced specialization on data and AI. And that enables us and our business partner to offer incentive to our clients, right? To do POC. So
Okay,
Dave,
awesome.
if you can.
Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Manish. Nice to meet you, Justin. Happy New Year, everyone. Yes, so first of all, shout out to Matt. He helped us out tremendously to get the certification done. So thank you so much, Matt. And we are going after the next certification, which is data warehouse. Now, what it brings back to what Manish said is there are two types of funding due to advanced specialization we get. One is Azure Innovate, and the other one is Azure Migrate, which is up to $100,000. So what we are offering now is performing free assessments for your clients. They have nothing to lose. We could look into their data and AI environment and suggest, based on the well-architected reviews, what's the right way to use Microsoft technologies. And if they align with it, we can get some funding for them. So it's open, and we love to have that 5 to 10 minute conversation, how you can get engaged with us through your client.
Yeah, and I thank you for that, Dave, because the one thing that I have seen, and actually a lot of it over just the last couple of weeks, is partner or customers who have the Power BI premium capacity licensing, and then that's being discontinued from Microsoft, and everybody's being forced over to Fabric. So we're already starting to see a ton of those opportunities. So having somebody like you to be able to come in and do assessments for those customers to evaluate, like, does it make sense to go to Fabric, and what are the positives and negatives? Be a great offer for the community. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate having you on today.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I want to bring in my partner, Matt, and we're going to talk a little bit about passwordless. So this may be something that some of you may never have heard about, but I will tell you from working at Microsoft and when this first rolled out, and it was like the greatest thing that's ever happened. I personally have not had to use a password for a long time on anything like Microsoft related. But that's, thanks to Microsoft, and then of course, coming over here to TPM, like, we've taken it to the nth degree, where, single sign-on, passwordless, all these things has really helped us. And it really helps a lot of onboarding and bringing people in. But Matt, tell us a little bit about, like, what is passwordless?
Well, do you know your password?
I don't know my password because I don't have one.
Yeah. So yeah, passwordless is what it says, right? It's logging into Windows. It's even logging into your Mac, which we'll talk about here in a second. It's logging into Microsoft 365 apps. It's logging into really any app that supports single sign-on. It's logging into those apps without a password, and using things like biometrics, using things like physical security keys, using an Authenticator app on your phone, but using ways that can verify your identity to ensure that it's actually you logging into those apps and giving you a great experience to where you don't have to remember a password and don't have to write it down on a Post-it note or go save it somewhere, along with all your other passwords. But that's passwordless in a nutshell.
Okay. And so you mentioned a few things: biometrics, security keys. I mean, I've heard from partners who have kind of gotten into this, and they've always just thought of passwordless as, oh, I have a security key, therefore I'm passwordless. So when you say those other things, biometrics, and now there's even passkeys, like, what are those things?
Yeah. Well, let me bring up a visual aid here so we have something to look at while we're talking. If we think about biometrics, I'm pretty sure everybody on this call is on a computer, whether it's Windows or Mac, that uses biometrics. If you bought a computer in the last 5 years, maybe even a little longer than that, it's going to have Windows Hello. If it's a Mac, it's going to have Touch ID. Those are examples of biometrics. So with Windows Hello, it can use a fingerprint. If that computer has a fingerprint sensor, it can use a special infrared camera. that measures dimensions of your face and looks at a few other things. But that's Windows Hello. So facial recognition and fingerprint. There's even keyboards now that come built in with Windows Hello fingerprint. When we think about for Mac, Mac uses Touch ID. You can actually set that up as a passwordless method for using to log into things. So we'll talk about how I use that every day. But that's a great example of biometrics. And then when we think about non-biometrics, we have examples of what we call a physical key. So on the far right here, you'll see an example of what that looks like. So this is from the company Yubico, their YubiKey. There's probably 20 different vendors out there that make different types of security keys. But that's another form of passwordless. So I plug in the key. I actually type in like an ATM PIN code. I actually touch the key to verify it's actually a human, and we can talk through what that means. And that signs me in. And then I also have the ability to use the Authenticator app on my phone as what we call a passkey, and that's fairly new. But whether it's Android or iOS, I use that phone, I scan a barcode on the screen, it then uses Face ID or Touch ID, or if it's Android, using fingerprint to then authenticate that it's really me, and then that passes authentication through. But again, all doing this without a password. My favorite is Windows Hello. And one of the reasons why it's my favorite is it just works, right? Every single day when I turn on my computer, I don't even have to look at the camera, and it automatically signs me in. And for us, and some of you on the call, you probably do this too, but for us with Entra ID, Azure Active Directory, whoops, we have, sorry, my slides automatically progress here. We have single sign-on configured. So when I sign in with Windows Hello, it's going to automatically sign me into all of my line of business apps without having to authenticate, get a push notification, type in a password. So when we talk about like byproducts of going passwordless, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here a little bit, but one of the main advantages for you and your end users is single sign-on, right? You never get prompted if you do it right. And then it's a great experience because they just sign with their face or their fingerprint every day to sign in.
So Matt, is this a, hey, you have to have E5, you have to have Microsoft 365 E5, or what kind of licensing does a customer have to do this?
Yeah. So let me flip back to this slide here for just a moment. So this is actually built right into Entra ID, right? You can go passwordless today. Probably everybody on this call can go passwordless. However, if you want to enforce passwordless, so like for us and our end users, for Justin, I don't give him an option to log in with a password. He has to log in with Windows Hello, or he has to log in with the Authenticator app, or has to log in with a security key. Well, I'm using conditional access and what's called authentication strikes to actually force that behavior. That requires more premium license, right? And so we could talk through, okay, is that plan 1 of Entra ID, Azure AD, or do you want to use E3, or do you want to go to E5 for additional capability? But just straight up passwordless is built right into your standard licensing today.
Well, and even it's even for like live accounts, Hotmail accounts as well now, right? Because I was just thinking, like, I don't even have a password for my live account, so which is really handy, because especially working at Microsoft, having live accounts, like you get a lot, at least I used to on my live account, I get a lot of, hey, this person's trying to log in, they put in a wrong password, but I don't have to worry about that anymore because there's no password for them to guess.
Right. Yeah. There's many services in the last few years, really since the pandemic. And pandemic really jump-started a lot of this, because if all of you remember, there were a lot of cyber attacks right when the pandemic happened. But a lot of consumer services, the Microsoft accounts are passwordless now. Google has their version of passwordless. I mean, name the consumer service. So it's starting to go mainstream. I'm just waiting for banks to get there, right? Oddly enough, the IRS now supports it, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's starting to become a thing. But here's the other thing, and as a security person, why I love passwordless. I love passwordless because it's a good user experience when you do it right. I also love passwordless because there's no password to steal. So as Justin said, he doesn't know his password. So if he gets phished and that phishing email bypasses all the other systems like Defender for Office and everything else, Exchange Online Protection, and somehow makes it to his inbox, and he clicks on that link and it asks him to type in his username and password, he doesn't know his password. So there's no password for him to give up. That's the big advantage here, right? And phishing, email phishing and identity compromise is still the #1 attack vector, worldwide, right? That's usually how attackers get in. And so if there's no password to steal, well, then that's just one more step now the attacker has to go through in their social engineering with you to figure out, okay, how do I compromise Justin's identity?
So Matt, you talked about conditional access, and I think we can get into a lot of those other things, but just from a starting point, like on a technical difficulty, how hard is it to set up passwordless for a Microsoft customer?
Yeah, it's not hard at all. So let me kind of walk you through. In fact, you guys are going to as a quick demo here. And let's zoom this in here so you can see what we're doing. So I'm going to show you a few different things. The first thing I'm going to show you is within Azure Active Directory or Entra ID, you have to create what's called an authentication method policy. And so this is built in. So let's clean this up here a little bit so you can see what we're doing. So when you go to Azure AD and you go to authentication methods and policies, you'll have some different options here. One of them is going to be for a passkey, FIDO2. And so this is where I can just turn that on for all users. And then on the configure screen, I've got some questions to go through here that I have to answer. But when I enable this, this is now saying that you can use a FIDO2 security key, like that YubiKey we talked about. Even the Authenticator app is FIDO2 now. That now basically enables passwordless for those types of passwordless options. Same with the Authenticator here. I just go into the policy for Microsoft Authenticator. I select all users, or I can add a group, however I want to do it. But notice over here on the right, I've now got an option for passwordless. So by changing that to passwordless and going to the configure tab here and going through some of the other advanced items, that now allows the Authenticator app to act as passwordless. And so it's really as simple as doing that. Now I'm oversimplifying it because now if you want to enforce it, well, this is where we go back to talking about things like conditional access. And I create a conditional access policy that says, okay, require passwordless. And that's using what's called an authentication strength. So what that means is this conditional access policy says when Justin signs in, we're going to grant him access, but we're going to require that he's using this authentication strength called passwordless. So what is that? Well, if we go over to our authentication strengths, and let's clean up the screen here so you can see what we're working with. Here's an authentication strength that says, okay, you can use Windows Hello, you can use a FIDO2 passkey. I'm not going to get into certificate-based authentication. That's kind of another form here. Authenticator app, and then temporary access pass, which I'll talk about in a second for why you want to use that. But that conditional access policy says, okay, if Justin's signing in, we're going to go look to see is Justin using one of these methods, and then we're going to let him through the front door. If he's not, we're going to block his access. And that's actually forcing his use of passwordless. Now, I know what some of you are probably wondering, well, what about on my computer? Like when I go to the login screen, I still see the password field. I got you covered for that one too. So when we talk about setting up a new computer within Intune, there's a policy that I can mandate Windows Hello. And I've got some controls here around how I want Windows Hello to behave. So for your new hires out there, when you get a new computer, it's going to ask them during the autopilot process to set up Windows Hello. And then once they set up Windows Hello, we can then push another policy to them that Microsoft has created here called Enable Password Experience. And what this does is this removes the password field. So on that login screen, the password field is now gone. So you have to log in with Windows Hello or that security key. So Justin asked about, how easy is it? I'm kind of oversimplifying. I mean, obviously there's some design here and some considerations you want to make, but it's just a matter of setting up some policies and really, setting this up as a POC, adding a few of your users to it, doing some testing, maybe yourself, and then land and expand from there.
I started thinking about like with help desk, years ago was, hey, get everybody on self-service password reset, and that will help reduce your help desk calls.
Right.
Well, if you don't even have a password to reset, I can only imagine that the help desk calls goes down even farther, which can help you, maximize some of your profitability with your help desk and some of your managed services. But Matt, there's you were showing like in this particular environment, there were like three types of verification or sign-in. I think you had, well, you had,
Let me bring it
yeah,
back
this
up
one.
here.
Yeah, no,
This
that
one.
last screen you were just on.
This one here?
So here, yeah, you got FIDO2 keys, you've got Authenticator, and you got temporary access pass. But I also see that you have SMS turned off, you have third-party OAuth turned off, voice calls turned off. Why do you want to turn those other ones off? Why
Yeah.
can't you use those?
Yeah, great question. So, in the early days of cloud and everything, SMS was great. I can log in and it's a form of two-factor or a form of multi-factor. Okay, I'm going to use my username and password, and then it's going to challenge me with a code that it's going to text me to my smartphone. Well, the problem nowadays, and there's lots of studies out there, not only from Microsoft but many other cybersecurity companies, is SMS, short message service, text messaging, can be easily compromised and intercepted. In fact, there was a 60 Minutes episode on this a couple of years ago. I mean, it's a thing. And so when we think about using SMS, it's highly dangerous. Now, does it work? It works, right? And if you have no other option, then you got to kind of do some risk management there. But a best practice is to disable SMS because it can be intercepted and easily phished. And then when we think about some of these other items like a voice call, it's actually a thing too through social engineering that attackers will call you to try to get you to leak your credentials. And so a voice call can be very difficult to protect against, but also think about your end users, right? So every time they go to log in, if the system's going to call you, that's not a very good user experience. Now, there's times and places for where you might want to use that, but let's disable it, right? It's not actually that secure. And then email OTP is one-time passcode. So it's going to actually email me a code. We all know about email security. That can easily be intercepted and phished. So best practice, you want to turn off some of these items that are less secure and frankly don't offer a great user experience. You actually want to kind of force your users in a box for their own good and also for your own security.
Yeah, great. Jared's asking a really good question. How about hybrid join devices and accessing on-premises resources and cloud join accessing the prem resources as well?
Yep. Yeah, great question, Jared. So there's a lot of documentation from Microsoft on this, and I can even work with you offline on it. But Windows Hello for Business has capability so that when you are in a hybrid join state, there's some additional policy you have to configure to tell it about your Active Directory domain controllers, and there's some service principals you have to create. But at the end of the day, it works. So we're not in a hybrid state, so I can't really show you this, but it is a supported scenario. So there's many organizations out there I used to work with when I was at Microsoft where we would set up FIDO2 security keys and Windows Hello for Business to access on-prem resources. There's just some engineering you have to do inside Active Directory to make that work. But if you're interested, let me know. I can send you the documentation and follow up with you.
All right. Spike's asking another one. How does disabling email OTP affect guests and their experience?
Yeah, great question. So it all depends on how you want to design this, right? And how you use guests. For us, and I'm sure many of you have seen our Viva Engage community, our message boards. But we actually, when you're a partner of ours and you access that Viva Engage portal, you're added as a guest. So you're a guest in our directory, a B2B guest. And so we require you to use some form of multi-factor authentication or passwordless. And so when you go to sign in, I'm asking you, okay, are you using any passwordless method like we talked about here, or are you using multi-factor authentication? So as long as we're requiring that, then life is good. So if I'm saying your only option is email OTP, well, then that's absolutely going to affect my guests when I disable that. So I have to give them some other options. And even when you start getting into B2B guest access, there's ways you can trust your guest organization as well. So it's going to go check to see, okay, do they have MFA set up? And if they do, then I can trust that. But again, it's all in how you engineer this and design. And that's why I'm saying I'm oversimplifying it. You want to kind of think through it. But Brittany, you bring up a great point. Have the end user experience in mind. How do we give them the absolute best experience? Because as you all know, if they don't have a good experience, they're going to go find a workaround, and then all this security goes out the window.
So Matt, I mean, I'm thinking about like there's no person out there that I could think of who is like, oh man, I love my password. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that I have passwords and I have the perfect password. And then they got to change it all the time. Changing passwords is a whole nother reason to move to this, right? So you don't have to require people to change every 90 days or whatever it might be. But when I think about this and you're showing that, you know, and you have oversimplified it, but it's not a technically really hard thing to deliver,
Yeah.
probably not something you're going to be able to charge a customer a ton of money for. Where's the real opportunity here for partners? So
Yeah.
you're going to go talk to them about passwordless, but then we talked about conditional access and all those other things. Where's the real opportunity here? Because I feel like if I go talk to a customer about, hey, let's get rid of your passwords, first they're probably
Yep.
going to freak out because it may be over
Right.
their head, but then you can walk them through it. But if we can take this easy approach, let's get you here. What else can we find?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great point. So let's break it down a little bit. I'm going to come back to adoption and change management. But as IT professionals and as a Microsoft partner, everything you do has to have an ACM component, right? And passwordless is no different, but we'll come back to that. So really what we want to think about is, how do I make money with this? A couple different ways. The first way is, as I mentioned, passwordless is basically free. It's built into Intra. However, to enforce passwordless, I have to use conditional access and authentication strengths. This requires premium licensing. So this requires the customer to have Intra ID Plan 1 or E3, Microsoft 365 E3, or E5. And I'll come back to why you may want E5 later. But this right here is going to be that licensing upsell. Hey, customer, we could turn on passwordless, but to actually enforce it, I need to get you on Intra ID Plan 1 at a minimum, because conditional access is included in Plan 1. So I need conditional access to be able to enforce passwordless. That's number one. Number two, as just we were kind of talking through here, there are some considerations and there's some designing you have to be able to do with that customer. And so you don't just want to go turn this on right away. It's like MFA. If I turn on MFA for everybody at a company, I'm going to have a really bad day and probably get fired. So I need to do a slow rollout. So let's put together a design. But before we put together the design, let's sit down with the customer and understand what's your requirements, right? And let's kind of understand what kind of apps do you sign into every day? What kind of computers do you have? Let's understand all this. And then we can put together a design and say, okay, our approach will be, we're going to turn on a couple people in the IT department. Let's see how it goes. And then let's grow that and grow that and grow that slowly. Well, that's all professional services. And depending on the size of the environment and who the customer is, we're talking anywhere from a few weeks to a few months, maybe more. So I got to get you on the premium licensing to enforce it. And I got to do some professional services with you to help you get this designed properly, tested, rolled out. And then from an ongoing perspective, there is some managed services opportunity. I got to be able to support this. Right now, as Justin mentioned, your help desk calls are going to go down, obviously, because you don't have a password to reset anymore. But users will be end users, right? And so if I'm using the Authenticator app on my phone and I get a new phone, okay, how do I go set up passwordless on that now? That's a call to the help desk. Hey, I lost my FIDO2 security key. My dog ate it. That's a call to the help desk. So there's some managed services components here to support passwordless. But then also from an end user perspective, and also think about reporting and proactive measures you can take, right? So then you can start to run reports and look at, well, what are the type of passwordless methods that people are using? What kind of apps are they accessing? Oh, here's a new app that the customer bought. We got to go set up single sign-on on that app to make sure it works with passwordless. So there are some managed services you can sell too. And then beyond that, I mentioned ACM, adoption change management. There's always training, right? I met a Microsoft partner. This was back when I used to work at Microsoft. Before the pandemic, they helped a customer. Passwordless was brand new at the time. They helped a customer roll out passwordless, and they used security keys. So in order to get your security key, you actually had to go to lunch in the break room, watch a presentation on how to do passwordless, and then they physically handed you the security key and got you set up. I thought that was genius, right? So there's training, and then they did some services with that customer where for the first couple of weeks, they were like actually in the office with the customer, walking around in people's cubicles. Hey, is it working okay? You have any questions? They developed, literature and training material. So adoption and change management is a huge opportunity as well. And again, it just kind of depends on who the customer is. So many different ways to to add this to your profitability, portfolio here. But think about it. Once you get on Passwordless, well, then what else can I go do? Because now I've got the premium licensing to enforce it. So as you know, there's many other things that come with that premium licensing. And it just starts to kind of land and expand.
Hey, Charlie's asking, is there a Microsoft funding program or mechanisms for deploying these authentication methods? Nothing's coming to mind for me, except that there are, through the security designation, when you have a security solution designation, you get the threat protection engagement and the data security, which you could probably like showcase to them through those assessments. Hey, you should probably move to something like Passwordless. But is there anything else that comes to mind for you on any programs that you know of?
Nothing that comes to mind for me, but I'm thinking exactly of the threat protection engagement. And technically that's showcasing Defender XDR and Sentinel, but you can weave some of this into it as well. And so, I'm even thinking about just, doing a security assessment, right? And your recommendations coming out of the security assessment is, hey, we got to go set up Passwordless. So Charlie, you could probably get creative there a little bit on the existing funding programs and how you could weave this into it. I see another great question in the chat window here. Can I remove a password from an account after migration to Passwordless is complete? So at this time, you can't create an account that does not have a password, right? And I can't remove the password from the account at this time. However, I can randomize the password, i.e. change it. So if I have an end user that I've just migrated to Passwordless, I'm going to go randomize their current password. I'm just going to change it. I'm going to make it something overly complex and 15, 20 characters long, but I'm not going to tell them what it is, but I've randomized it. So it's not removing the password, it's just making it unusable. But then as I mentioned through authentication strengths, you don't even give them the option to use a password. So A, they don't know it, and B, they won't have the option. So hopefully it answers that question.
Hey, Matt, I want to go back
Yeah.
when you were talking about the assessment. And a great example, like we're delivering a security assessment on behalf of one of our partners right now. And as you're going through this assessment, a lot of these things like Passwordless are coming up, right? In fact, I remember the very first day that you went back, you were talking about authentication methods. But can you kind of give some real live examples of doing a security assessment or a threat protection engagement and how some of these things might bubble up as you're going through it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point. So I've done a lot of these over the years, and like the one we're working on right now that Justin mentioned, that customer, frankly, didn't know that this stuff existed, right? And so, and that's probably the truth for a lot of customers out there is they're busy running their business, they're busy keeping the lights on. They're not like you as a partner where they're keeping up to date on all this stuff. Most of the time, they don't know. In fact, I met a very large enterprise customer when I was at Microsoft. They owned Entra, Azure AD at the time, but they were using Okta. They had no idea that they owned Entra. Nobody ever told them that they owned it, right? So when you go through and you run assessments and you start to talk about, hey, look, you're not using Passwordless, that's my recommendation is to move to Passwordless. Well, then you're also doing kind of a miniature workshop briefing to show them some of the capability. And the best way to show them is, well, how do you use it? Right? So imagine one of you on the call as a Microsoft partner, you're running a security assessment, and that customer doesn't have Passwordless, and you're making a recommendation for it, and they say, well, what is it? Well, let me just show you, right? Let me show you my environment, just like I'm doing here on this call. If this was in person, I would show you my MacBook and how that works with Passwordless. I would show you my Windows computer and how Windows Hello works. So it makes for a great demo, but most of the time customers don't know that this stuff is even possible. I've heard comments where, oh yeah, I've heard like, Ping Identity and Okta and these other identity providers, they have the capability. I never knew Microsoft did. And I'll be the first to admit, Microsoft doesn't have the best awareness, programs, but it's a big company and lots of products, right? But as partners, that's our job is to say, yeah, actually, they do have this capability and you actually already own it. And that's a game changer. And then being able to demonstrate the capability and then work with them on a plan for, okay, how do we get started? And, to be real with you, when we look at these security assessments, usually the high-risk items are the IT team. And it's the IT admins that have global admin or have owner rights in Azure. Those are the people we need to go get on Passwordless first. And then we start to look at people that are in finance and that control the money. They're the ones that are getting phished the most. So we got to go get them on Passwordless. So then we start to prioritize and say, okay, how do we get started and go from there? But yeah, most of the time customers don't know.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit, because I love how you have us set up. And when you think about like the C-suite, finance people have access to a lot of really sensitive data. So it kind of goes beyond passwordless. But again, like what you were saying, like you want to get them on passwordless, but what are some other, like for us, what are some other conditional access things that you have in place? Or even the account setup, right? So like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know how deep you want to go into how we're set up, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So um, again, this all starts with everybody in this call who's a Microsoft partner. It starts with you just kind of playing with this in your lab or even in your environment and learning, right, before you go to a customer, because there's a lot to it. But check out what I'm showing here on the screen. At the bottom here on these authentication strings, you see temporary access pass. If you haven't used a temporary access pass, it's basically what it says, right? So I issue you a temporary password, basically. And when I issue you a temporary password, it's only good for a period of time. And it's a complex password. And so think about a new hire, right? If one of you were to hire me today and you had this all set up, you would issue me a temporary access pass. Okay, Matt, for you to go set up your computer or to go set up the Authenticator app on your phone so you can set up your computer, I'm going to give you this tap. You're going to type in the tap, and that's going to let you through the front door. And it's like a one-time use only password, right? And so for a new computer, and this is exactly what we do, we standardize on Surface, although this works with really any Windows computer. We use Autopilot. And so when a new hire gets a computer, they get the Windows welcome experience, and then they type in their email address, and it's going to say, what's your temporary access pass? And they're going to enter that temporary access pass, and then Autopilot takes care of the rest and starts to set up the computer. And then during that process, because we've enabled Windows Hello, it's going to then ask the end user, hey, you need to set up Windows Hello. So use facial recognition, or if you have a fingerprint sensor, use your fingerprint, and it's going to ask them to set up Windows Hello. And so that's a use for a temporary access pass. Another use, I met a customer a while back. They standardized on FIDO2 security keys. And so when a end user maybe lost their key, or they got to the office one day and realized they left their key at home, but they still got to get work done, okay, I'll just give you a temporary access pass for the day. That lets you in, you can get logged into the systems, do your job, and then life is good. So that's some other considerations you can make of how do I issue new computers? How do I deal with this when somebody loses their key or forgets about it? How do I get you set up in Windows Hello? That's where you use a temporary access pass.
Matt, what about users who, if I wanted to go work at a partner's office and I don't want to bring my computer, they had some extra office, like a hotel type cubicle or something I wanted to work out of. If I'm on passwordless, how do I get logged in there?
Yeah. So yeah, let's take this example. Let's say one of you bring me in as a contractor. Maybe one of you say, hey, Matt, I'm going to hire your company to do partner center assessment on us, right? Whatever the case may be. And I come to your office. Well, if I don't have an identity with you, you're going to have to create an identity. And you may say, well, Matt, you're going to use a FIDO2 security key, like a YubiKey. So you're going to give me a YubiKey and say, you're going to use that to access our systems. You may also say, hey, why don't you use the Authenticator app on your phone, follow these instructions, and you're going to create a passkey on your phone, which is basically a virtual security key. And then you're going to use that passkey to log into our systems. If you really wanted to do this right, and this is what we do, is you would use Windows 365 and use a cloud PC. In fact, I'm talking to you on a cloud PC right now. I'm on my my Mac, and on my Mac, I'm in Windows 365, and I joined this Teams meeting within Windows 365 Cloud PC. So you may say, hey, Matt, here's a hotel cube at our office. It's got a monitor, keyboard, and mouse, and maybe like a dummy terminal for Windows. Maybe it's just a standard laptop. Use that security key I gave you, or use the passkey on your phone to get signed in. It's going to automatically launch your cloud PC, and then now you're in our system and you're able to do whatever work you need to do. So there's ways you can engineer this, but that really opens up the door now for, okay, how do I deal with contractors? How do I deal with people that lose things? How do I save money on not having to buy laptops for everybody? It really opens the door and allows you to have some new capability. But these are the kind of experiences that your customers are, I guarantee, are starting to think about. But for you to help your customer with it, you got to kind of help yourself first.
Yeah, and I know you're really excited about Windows 365 Link coming up. and putting passwordless in and all the other things that you were just talking about. There's a couple of more great questions here. Zach saying, are there any vulnerabilities that you've seen with passwordless or foresee for the future? Look, you've gone through the list, and like we talked about, because you could enable passwordless with email OTP only, right? That would be a vulnerability. Even SMS is a vulnerability. So can you talk through like how to reduce, and again, that's why like you want to be an expert at this, so you can, it's not just about going passwordless, but doing passwordless in the right way so that somebody is secure and it's actually a security a positive to them and not a negative. So talk through vulnerabilities.
Yeah, there are some vulnerabilities out there, absolutely, and cybersecurity is it's a never-ending game. It's whack-a-mole. It's never going to stop. You're never going to be secure, and that's the name of the game. And in our environment, I've done a lot of work, but I'm continuously doing work trying to catch up with all this, right? And you should be as well. So when we think about that FIDO2 security key or the Authenticator app, well, using the Graph, Microsoft Graph, and using the API for Microsoft Graph, a attacker can actually use the Graph API to create a temporary access pass to set up a FIDO2 security key or to set up the Authenticator app. They can even spoof it. So what is that? So that's considered a vulnerability. So now how do I protect against that? Well, now I got to go back and look at things like conditional access and other policies in my environment to police how you're using the Graph API and how you're accessing the Graph, right? So that's been reported by some independent cybersecurity companies out there. Another one to consider is when you think about the Authenticator app. I'm sure a lot of you have been using multi-factor authentication with the Authenticator app for years, right? So you log into a website, it gives you a code. I go to the app, I type in the code. Well, that can be phished, again, using things like the Graph API. So I can stand up a website today that looks just like the Microsoft login page, have you type in your username and password. It actually goes to your tenant, but then I can spoof that code you type into the Authenticator app. So there are some vulnerabilities you want to be aware of, but it's all about, again, in the game of cybersecurity, what additional controls can I put into place to make it more expensive for that attacker to require more level of effort to where they do give up, right? And keeping the honest people honest. But it's a never-ending game. But yeah, there are some considerations there. Also, when you think about the Authenticator app, I get asked all the time, well, how do I make sure it's really Matt and not Justin who took my phone? Well, smartphones have biometrics. So when I go to sign in with my passkey on the Authenticator app, it's going to use Face ID for an iPhone or fingerprint for an Android, right? But even then, I could be asleep at night, your kids hold your phone up to your face and log in. So there's always going to be some vulnerabilities with this. But again, what do you do in your environment to make sure you have all the right protections in place?
Well, let's talk about those passkeys for a minute, Matt, because I mean, it's quickly becoming one of my favorite things, because they're like, even banks are adopting it. I'm going to different websites and there's different companies who are adopting passkeys. But what makes a passkey special?
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll just blow this up a little bit so we can see it. So a passkey. Well, first off, let's look at what's over here on the right side. We've got this FIDO2 security key, right? This uses the FIDO2 protocol, and I'm going to simplify this here for a moment. But when you plug this in and you use it as a passwordless option, two things are required. One, you have to type in a PIN, like your ATM PIN, right? But it's an 8-digit PIN that only you know. The second thing you have to do is, see this little gold plate? You got to touch it, and it uses capacitive touch. It uses the heat from your finger. So those two things are required as part of this FIDO2 protocol. And what that is doing is it's actually validating you are who you say you are. And the fact you have to touch it, now, yes, you could probably spoof that, but the fact you have to touch it also means you're an actual human and you're not some kind of bot that's trying to automate this. So when we think about a passkey uses FIDO2, and you could have a physical passkey like this security key, or you can have a virtual passkey like the Authenticator app. So now if we take the Authenticator app, it's using FIDO2. So when I go to sign in, it's going to say, hey, Matt, here's Face ID on an iPhone, or here's fingerprint on an Android. Validate you are who you say you are. And so again, it's just taking the physical key and making it virtual. But the best part about it as well, now Microsoft doesn't do this, at least not yet, but some vendors out there, and even the consumer vendors who now have passkeys, they can sync between devices. So if I lose my phone, I got to go get a new phone from the Verizon store, my passkey could be synced. Now, again, Entra doesn't do this yet, right? And I don't know if they ever will, but that is one advantage of a passkey, a virtual passkey, is that it follows you around on devices. And look, there's no fee for it, whereas physical keys can range in price. The other thing I like about the passkey here is when I go to sign in, the virtual passkey, when I go to sign into a website or a line of business app that uses passwordless, all I got to do is, and I can't really show this to you because it won't let you on a Teams call, but all I do is scan a barcode with my phone, and then it asks me a question, is this Matt at partnermessage.com? Yes, it uses facial recognition, and then now it signs me into that line of business app, right? So just, I don't know if that's where you're getting at.
I love it. And again, this goes back to like, look, just setting up passwordless to me, it's an easy door opener, because a lot of people would be excited about it if I never have to remember another password. Or you see people who've got books of all their passwords, they don't know how to manage their passwords. Like, getting rid of passwords is a massive opportunity. It's not a whole lot of work to get them off of it, but as you're talking about it, doing some of the things with conditional access and setting it up properly. And even like in the case like with me, like I have to be on this computer if I want to do certain things, right? You've got to lock down to where Justin's got to be on his main computer at home at his home office, or he cannot do certain tasks. So being able to set those things up is where the real money comes in, and hopefully you guys are starting to see that. Like, it's a good door opener. To the point earlier, like Microsoft doesn't do a great job of telling the story, and I think that's across a lot of the different workloads that Microsoft has. They're really relying on partners to go out and tell that story. And it really becomes one of those things, like, your biggest competitor is not another MSP, CSP, SI, whatever. Your biggest competitor is the customer not knowing. So it's on you to create campaigns, go put something in a marketplace, go create something on your website, go create a one-pager, do some webinars and show people what this is all about, and see what kind of opportunities come in. And what's fantastic about it is all of the other opportunities that can come from it. And then I will tell you, even with that security assessment that we're doing, or even when we're working with each of you as partners, when we get guest access into your account, the first thing we do is we log in. And we've had some people that we've worked with, whether it's customers or partners, where there was no multi-factor authentication at all. And then there were others where we drop down the list and it's like, oh, wow, we can do email. Let's do that. And so you can, just by getting an account, you can see how much opportunity there is just from clicking on that drop down.
Yep.
Matt, there's another question from Jason in here about technicians doing remote work on client computers. And they've remoted in using remote tools to the client server, and they need to log into that virtual server remotely with their 365 account. So is there any issues? Because he's saying FIDO keys don't work across remote control tools. Yeah.
Jason, it takes a little bit of engineering, right? And there are some solutions that you can put together on that. So when we think about like remote desktoping into a Windows machine now supports passwordless and supports passkeys, whether it's virtual or physical. There's some other things you could do if you use the Intune suite, which is the add-on to Intune that has the remote support tools that supports passwordless. So there's some solutions you could start to piece together. But the way I like to think about this is, let's just go back. Like, you actually want to consider re-architecting some of this stuff, right? And really asking the tough questions of why. Because if we're going to go passwordless as a partner, and we're going to now have to support our customers because we're passwordless, and then we have customers that are now passwordless, that's going to change how we support, right? And how we do things. And so you may have to redesign your process and maybe even some of the technology that you use. One other thing that, and then I'll get to Dimitri's question here. One other thing I was thinking about as Justin was talking, I've looked at it this way for years. Microsoft really gives you the platform, right? So Microsoft is going to tell your customer, hey, here's Entra ID or Microsoft 365 or Teams, or here's Azure. It's not a solution. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't resolve any business needs. It's not a solution until a partner like yourself comes in and makes it a solution. And I think that mindset's really helpful, especially with what we're talking about here. Is it requires some consulting and some conversation with the customer to really custom tailor this to make sure it fits their needs, right? And then it actually becomes a solution. Dimitri says, I wonder why Enter ID doesn't want us to restore MFA keys. I have multiple clients and accounts and it's a pain. Yeah, I have always kept 2 phones working in case one of the devices. Yeah, that's a great point, Dimitri. Absolutely. Especially if there's like a mission critical thing here. Like let's say I'm an admin and I have global admin access to my tenant. I'm probably going to want multiple passkeys, right? I'm probably going to want multiple passwordless methods available to me in case I lose my phone or I lose that security key. So yeah, having a backup is very good. Before we go, I'm going to offer one last thing for all of you to think about. Justin hinted at something. He said, "Hey, there's certain things that if I want to do certain tasks in our tenant, I got to be on this computer and this computer only." So in conditional access, think about a policy where you whitelist somebody's computer. So for example, if Justin's an admin, I don't want just, let's say if somebody compromises his account, I don't want just anyone to be able to log in as him and be able to manage the tenant. So think about creating a policy that says, okay, Justin, for you to log in, you have to log in from these devices, your Surface, your iPhone, whatever it is, because you have administrator privileges. That's just another step you can take to make it more expensive and more difficult for an attacker to then compromise identity and then try to use that identity to log in. Because they don't have this machine, it's not going to allow them to log in. So think about additional conditional access policies like that you can take to your customers to offer additional value on that. And then think about all the reporting behind it and the services behind that. Okay, I think we're running out of time here.
Yeah, Matt, thank you for going in through this. This is I think it's been incredible, and I don't see enough customers and even partners adopting this. First thing, as always, I talked about this earlier. Make sure you're using your internal use rights. Everybody gets E5 with the Modern Work Solution designation. If you don't have a Modern Work Solution designation, reach out. Like, we'll help you get it. That's the easiest one to get. So use this stuff, and once you use it and you experience life without a password, you're going to want to go tell everybody, just like I do. Go tell all of your customers about it. Show them how it works, and then see what flood of other security opportunities that brings up. But hopefully this has been valuable to you all, and look forward to bringing more content like this for the rest of 2020.